what is going on with Nissan India? Now, I'm sure that's a question a lot of you have on your mind, and believe me, Nissan is well aware about it. Yes, they've been quiet for the last couple of years, and yes, they've soldiered on with just one very, very capable product, the Magnite. But that's all about to change, because from now until the end of 2026, they've got a bunch of new products lined up, and it all starts with this, the brand new 4th generation X Trail. It's coming in as a full CBU import. It's going to serve as a halo product and a brand builder, and it's here to remind the people of India about the glory days of Nissan and what happens when you move further up the pecking order. The question is it good enough to do that?
Do you think it is, and what do you think the price will be? Let us know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, and in case you haven't already, do subscribe to Autocar India. Now let's get back into it and start with the one thing that seems to have caused the biggest stir on social media, and that's the engine.
Now, I'm sure by now you've read the news, you've heard all the stories, and you're aware of what's under the hood of this Nissan X Trail. That's right, it's a 1.5 litre, 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine rated to a CVT gearbox. But I'm here to tell you, don't judge a book by its cover, because this is actually a great engine. So just what makes this engine so special? Well, for one, it's very, very high tech. It's even got something called variable compression ratio, which I'm going to try and explain to you right now.
Now you've heard of variable ratio steering, variable valve timing, and variable geometry turbochargers. But variable compression ratio, that's tech that Nissan has patented. Put simply, the goal is better performance when you're accelerating hard and better efficiency when you aren't. An actuator adjusts the control arm, which in turn adjusts the vertical position of the piston stroke, leading to continuously variable compression ratio, higher for better efficiency and lower for greater performance. It's wonderfully nerdy, but what matters is, it works.
And now sure, you're thinking, yes, all that tech is all well and good, but it's still a small engine that's moving a big 7-seat SUV. But take a look at the outputs. 163 horsepower and 300 Newton meters of torque.
For comparison's sake, that's 32 horsepower and 20 Newton meters less than the 2-litre TSI engine in the Skoda Kodiaq. But you wouldn't know it from driving it.
And trust me, this car feels even more potent than those numbers suggest. First, I have to talk about this CVT gearbox. Now, Nissan has historically been very, very good with CVTs. They've evolved them very fast, right from their smaller cars like the Magnite to more expensive stuff like this. And this really does seem like one of the best around, because it's unlike any other CVT I've driven. It doesn't feel like a CVT. There's very little rubber band. It's quite responsive to your accelerator inputs. And it's got 8 steps that you can access via these paddles over here. You get 3 drive modes, Eco, Standard and Sport, and there is a marked difference in the responsiveness of both the engine and the gearbox depending on which one you choose. Now, I'm not about to suggest that this is some racy powertrain that belongs under the hood of a sports car, but it is way better than you think and way better than the numbers suggest. In a big family SUV like this, it does a great job of instantly shifting from easygoing in the city to urgent when you want to overtake somebody, like here out on the highway. And the best part is, it's smooth, it's refined, and that's not something you can always say about a 3-cylinder engine. I can actually hear a bit more road noise at this point than I can engine noise. And that's really saying something for a 3-cylinder. And when you do wind it up past, say, 4,000 RPM, it's not a terrible noise. I'm really impressed. And then you might be thinking, but what if you load it up with people? Well, I've actually got 2 people in the car and some luggage right now. And we did have 5 people earlier, and it did make a difference. It never fell short of breath. and it always felt up to the task of pulling this heavy car with a full complement of passengers and luggage. So yeah, prepare to be impressed. Now, another concern that you might have when you think of a big 7-seat SUV powered by a small turbo petrol engine is fuel economy. And now, yes, it's never going to be as good as a diesel or even a strong hybrid, and certainly not as good as a range extender hybrid like Nissan's e-Power system. But then again, never underestimate the capability of a nice, modern, direct and port injected turbocharged petrol engine with mild hybrid technology as this one is. Even in our long day of driving and shooting and even getting stuck at a toll booth, the screen is showing upwards of 11 kpl, which you'll agree is not too bad for a big SUV like this. You also will have no doubt noticed by now that this car is riding on a set of very handsome 20-inch wheels. That's big even by segment standards. Now that should be a cause for concern when it comes to ride quality, but amazingly, again, they've somehow done it. The suspension setup of this car is just so superbly judged that it even manages to make up for those 20-inch wheels. Now, of course, here out on the big open highway, it's not too much of a concern because it's nice and smooth. But we drove it in the city too, and even there, it never thunks too hard on potholes and discomforts anybody in your cabin. And even out here on the highway at 3-digit speeds, the ride is comfortable. It's not overly soft, it's not overly firm, it's just perfectly judged. You don't get tossed around even in the back seat. I've sat in the back for a little while on this highway and it's just been great. A slight disappointment is that the X Trail no longer comes with 4-wheel drive. Now that was a conscious decision to help keep the price under control. And well, unless you are the type who takes your soft-roader off the road, I don't think you'll have too much cause for concern. But yeah, for a car with X in its name, you do kind of miss that, especially in this segment where it is offered by most vehicles. And it's not just the suspension setup that gives you confidence. Out here on the highway, it's the steering too. Rock solid, a good amount of weight, just gives you a great deal of reassurance. And in the city, it's light enough to twirl with one finger, and this car actually has a surprisingly good turning radius for something so big.
There's a pattern emerging here, and that's that there's more to the X Trail than meets the eye, and certainly more than what the numbers suggest. You really have to drive it to experience what I mean. But does that hold true about the rest of the car? Time to pull over and check out the interior.
Now, like with a lot of Japanese cars, the interior is a nice pleasant departure from the norm that we've gotten used to from just about every other manufacturer, and that it's quirky, it's interesting, and it's different. I love the design, I love how layered and horizontal it is, and I like the use of different colors and textures and materials. It's brown up top, grey in the middle, a little metallic finish there, cross stitching this textured fabric over here, and this lovely texture where otherwise would have been piano black. I really prefer this compared to that. There are even nice interesting touches like this E-shifter that Nissan calls it, where the whole lever slides back and forth. It's just a delight to use in my opinion. And yeah, quality is fabulous. Fit and finish, plastics, the way the buttons are damped and work is just so good. But here's the thing, there's quality and there's perceived quality, and this is a car that doesn't shout quality at you even though it actually is very high quality. There's no shiny chrome, dramatic lighting, bright colors, that sort of thing which people tend to like, but I can assure you that really it's very well built. Similarly, these seats are fabric, again very high quality fabric and probably the better choice ultimately, but people might wonder why there isn't leather or leatherette. It also goes down to the equipment list. This color screen, beautiful, extremely customizable and very informative. But this one, well, it's an old 8-inch unit and I think it's the same one as they used to have in the Kicks. And well, speaking of that, let's take a look at the equipment list because there are some interesting hits and misses in the Nissan X Trail.
First up, the features we like. There's dual zone climate control, a panoramic sunroof, a digital instrument cluster, and a wireless charger, amongst other stuff. However, items we've come to expect from this segment that you do not get are powered front seats, ventilated front seats, a powered tailgate, and as mentioned, leatherette upholstery. On the safety front, you get 7 airbags, including one between the front seats, a 360-degree camera, electronic parking brake, and the usual host of electronic safety aids. However, there are no ADAS features on offer here. So while the equipment list is decent, it is missing some hygiene features for this segment that rivals do offer. And with that out of the way, let's take a look at the second and third rows.
Now the driver's seat is set to my driving position. I'm just under 5'8". I've still got decent knee room and decent headroom, but this isn't even this seat's final form, because you can slide it way back and you can even recline it quite a lot. Now when you're in this fully reclined laid back position, knee room is just super vast. There's lots of space to stretch your feet and even tuck them under the front seat, and headroom, because you're behind the sunroof now, is a whole lot more. Thigh support is lacking quite a bit because this seat squab is quite short, but that's the price you pay for all the flexibility. As I mentioned, the sunroof is big, it lets in a lot of light. So do these windows, maybe a little bit too much. I wish they had window blinds back here. You get USB ports, a Type A and a Type C, and rear AC vents. Now here's the thing, there is a center armrest, but it's the whole middle seat backrest. So when you do that, you get cup holders and a phone holder down here, but also exposes you to either the rear seats or your luggage, which is not ideal. Now speaking of those rear seats, it is quite a bit of an effort to get in the back there. So let me show you how that's done. Now, as you can see, all that good sliding and reclining work has to be undone to get this seat forward so I can get in the back. And even then, it's quite an exercise in yoga and origami. Once you're in place, you can only pull the seat back so far before it slams down on your toes. And yeah, my ankles are making contact with the seat. My knees are just about clear of the seat in front, and I can assure you all that legroom I was talking about in the middle row, it's no longer there. Now, as for this back seat, the actual backrest only goes about halfway up my back, and with the headrest up, my head is essentially outside the car and inside the tailgate at this point. So yeah, not a lot of room here, definitely only suitable for kids and only on short journeys. And yeah, it's not particularly comfortable either. There are cup holders, but not much else. There's no AC vents, there's no speakers, there's no USB ports, just a small window for a view outside. But really, I think a little bit of compromise here is worth it as occasional use third row seats, because on the whole, they've done a great job with the exterior. Now, I think the exterior design is an absolute triumph, and it might be just what sells this car to a lot of people. Now, you might remember the original X Trail and even the second generation were quite square and boxy, reflecting their sort of tough off-road credentials. The third generation, which didn't come to India, went all swoopy and curvy, and this fourth generation, in my opinion, is a nice mix of the two. It's square-edged, but it's still got some modern crossover styling elements. It starts with this really bold Nissan V-Motion grille that really drives home that impactful face, and I also like the execution of the split headlamps, although it's a little disappointing that the indicators front and rear are halogens while everything else is LED. There are also interesting bits like these aero flaps that let air through there, and even active aero down here that opens and closes depending on cooling requirements. Now, my favorite touch on this car was the inspired choice to choose 20-inch wheels. Now, that's a bold choice, and I think that's what's going to set it apart from rivals. Around the side, a bit of chrome to line the windows, some nice curvy doors, a bit of cladding down here, a floating roof effect, and at the back, a somewhat muscular looking rear end.
The boot space with all the seats in place is, as you might imagine, not a whole lot, but with the last row down, it expands to a cavernous 585 liters. And while it's cool that the luggage cover stores nicely under the floor when it's not needed, not cool is that there's no spare tire on offer, just a puncture repair kit. So just how can we sum up a car like the X Trail then, and in the context of its rivals like the Skoda Kodiaq, Jeep Meridian, and even the Toyota Fortuner, How does it stack up?
Now, as always, a lot hinges on the price, which at the time of filming this, we don't know yet. But I think it's more so in the case of the X Trail because it's just so far removed from the only other Nissan product in India right now, the Magnite. Now, this is going to be a full CBU import, so it's already got import duties working against it. But Nissan has hinted that they've worked very, very carefully on refining the spec they've chosen for India with this car. Now, I don't mean just the features that they've left in or taken out, but also the powertrain. They looked at all-wheel drive, they looked at a bigger petrol engine, they looked at diesel even, and they also looked at a regular hybrid as well as their e-power hybrid, but it was all proving to drive the cost way too high. So, fingers crossed, they've nailed a very solid price for this, because this is a very solid car and it operates in a very attractive segment, one that will help build brand Nissan and prepare the Indian public for their next big wave of products, just like the original X Trail did when it launched the brand almost 20 years ago.